I'm Gregg Detwiler. I am the Director of Intercultural Ministries at Emmanuel Gospel Center in Boston. Here today with some friends to continue a conversation that we've started on Christian-Muslim relations. We mentioned in our last segment that, in the greater Boston area there are over perhaps 50,000 Muslims that have come from around the world, different nations around the world that have now settled in the Boston area. And so we have this great opportunity as a Christian community to reach out to the Muslim community that is here. In the last segment, we really looked at some of the positive aspects or examples of the Christian community engaging with the Muslim community and their Muslim neighbors. But this session, we're going to kind of go in a different direction where we're going to look at some of the objections and challenges to Christian engagement with Muslims, some of the barriers or obstacles that some Christians feel in engaging with Muslims. There are a lot of various perspectives that Christians have regarding engagement with Muslims. And you could kind of put it along a continuum. On one side of the continuum would be, what I would call an irenic or a peace-loving kind of posture. And then at the other end of the spectrum, it may be more of a polemical or a strident position. And then you kind of have moderating positions all along the continuum. There's a book that I have read. I haven't actually finished it yet, but it's edited by a British Christian named Colin Chapman, who's worked among Muslims for many years. And I love the title of the book. I feel like it's really instructive. It's Between Hostility and Naivety, the Best Christian Responses to Islam. And I think that title really says a lot. Between hostility and naivety. On one hand, we can have a very fearful, suspicious, and even a hostile response to Muslims as Christians or, as Americans or whatever. And then there are maybe those who maybe have a naive approach to say there's no concerns out there, that that it's all a figment of our imagination, any concern that we may have about militant Islam or whatever. And so you kind of have these two extremes. But I think somewhere in the middle, there is the place of Jesus, where Scripture says that Jesus came full of truth and grace, and truth. And that we really want to avoid certainly hostility, we want to avoid naivete, and we want to engage with Muslims in the way that Jesus would, in the way Jesus would call us to. And so in this session, I want us to explore some of the objections and challenges, real or perceived, that some Christians may have about Muslims and about engaging with Muslims. And I have with me today some friends. Let me just introduce them again. To my left is Dave Kimball. Dave is a colleague with me at Emmanuel Gospel Center. His role is Minister at Large for Christian-Muslim Relations. Next to him is Nathan Elmore. Nathan wears a number of hats, but in this conversation, he is the program coordinator and consultant for Christian-Muslim relations for Peace Catalyst International. And on the other side of the table is my friend Paul Biswas. Paul is a pastor. He serves as a pastor of a community, really, of churches, of house churches called International Community Church Boston. And we welcome all of you to the table and to this conversation. So let's jump right in, and I'm going to start off with a really easy question, no intimidating whatsoever. We're just going to plunge, right into the deep water. And for some Christians, I know that there may be this perception, that, or the question that emerges, what about militant Islam? Aren't Muslims at their core really seeking to conquer America? Isn't Islam a real threat to our democracy? So starting off with that real gentle question, I'd just like to kind of get your responses for some Christians that maybe have that as their mental model or their viewpoint. And we'll start on this side of the room.
You want
Go ahead, brother. you can start.
Want to wade into it? Okay. Well, yeah, it is an important question, Greg, and there's no reason we shouldn't be. With Christianity and with Islam being the two largest global religions, Todd Johnson at the Global Center for the Study of Christianity says that 33% of the world is Christian, 22% of the world is Muslim. If you think about that, the points of interaction are just going to happen.
Sure.
So this
and
is
even giving that statistic, we may be a debatable point from some of our Muslim friends. I don't know.
That's right. Well, yeah, that's true. So yeah, check all statistics by all means. However, to the point of the question, I guess the first thing I want to say about militant Islam, as you kind of set the table, is that terrorism is not an exclusive province of one religious tradition. In fact, unfortunately, terrorism is attended to many, and some would argue most, religious traditions in history. So that's one thing to say, and I think we have this caricature, some of us do, some Westerners, some Americans, some Christians have a caricature of Islam as being the only one attached to this thing that is this militant religiosity. Now, the second thing is just a fact that militant Islam is a small minority within a very large, robust, historical religious tradition. I think that all of those words matter in that characterization. So that's kind of how I would wade into that conversation. You have some attending questions about conquering and about Islam in the West, I think, which maybe I'll let some others respond and chime in on those as well.
Dave?
Yeah, so I agree with what our brothers said here, that I think what this points up is that we need to go back and examine our stereotypes and our mental models. We need to educate ourselves, and because if we don't, then we're going to come across as being stereotyping and as being perhaps bigoted about the way that we look at Muslims. And I think too, which I think we may have alluded to in our past session, is that really what we need to do is we need to know Muslims on an individual basis, on an individual level, so that we don't stereotype. We don't like to be stereotyped, and I don't think anybody does. And I think the other issue here is that if we don't educate ourselves about what's really happening, is that what's going to happen is we're going to become paralyzed. We're going to allow fear or hatred or both to paralyze us. And we have to admit that we live in an evil world. Evil exists around us. But I don't think it's fair, nor is it right, to generalize this to all Muslims. This will allow us to live in a way that we're not being naive on the one hand, as you pointed out, but at the same time we're not being controlled by our fear or our anger.
Paul, do you have something to add to that?
Yes, there is some militancy in Islam, but I agree with Nathan that there is a number is very few. As far as South Asian Muslim is concerned, except some parts of Pakistan, India, Bangladesh, so Pakistan is the second largest Muslim country in the world, and Bangladesh is the third largest Muslim country in the world. So majority Muslims are living in Southeast Asia and South Asia. So as far as South Asian Muslims is concerned, I should say 90% of South Asian Muslims don't support the militant group. So even they don't like the Wahhabism even will be introduced in South Asian countries. Even many people, many Muslims, I talk to many Muslims in Pakistan. I have been to Pakistan, and even here many Pakistani Muslims don't support that militancy that and the Wahhabism is trying to introduce in Pakistan, some parts of Pakistan, and even some parts of Bangladesh. So majority Muslim don't support the militants. But after 9/11, the Christians in this country, especially the evangelical circle, have some misunderstanding that all Muslims are militants and all Muslims are terrorists. No, some terrorists may be Muslim, but not all Muslims are terrorists. So I agree with Brother Dave that we need to educate ourselves. We need to educate ourselves. This is This is totally a misunderstanding, and we need to look at the Muslims individually, so individual Muslims.